Perspective. And today our topic is infant mortality. And it's not a topic that I picked. I'm no expert in this. We have state policymakers actually pick the topic. So these seminars are offered in 22 states, including Washington, D.C. And we hear from people who know what's going to be upcoming issues of importance, and the topics are picked by their rating on how important this is. So we run around and find experts and to bring to the seminar, because our whole purpose is not lobbying, but also about educating. And so that's the goal of the seminar. We typically do 2 seminars a year, and I have to occasionally polish my tin cup and go around the different colleges in my university to ask for funding so we can pay for the speakers to come. But this year we had funding from Kellogg Foundation, so we thank them for their support. On this topic, I think it's really important, and as I work with people, since this is not my area of knowledge, I found it to be interesting that people carry different ideas of what they know about infant mortality. So I asked the question, why do you think that the United States and Michigan have such a high rate of deaths? You know, my students think we're a rich country and we should be top of the top, but when you look at our ranking globally, we don't look very good at all in the area of these outcomes. And so I get responses. Now, these are from my friends, educated friends, who say things like, well, you know, it's because you read it in the paper. People abuse babies, and that's why they die. And I'm thinking, well, okay, you know, there's no doubt about that, but, you know, what are the factors that lead to this? My hairdresser, I asked him, and he was very thoughtful. I said, you know, you're very thoughtful, Tony. He says, well, you know, this poverty issue. I'm thinking maybe that has something to do with it. Thoughtful, judicial. So what I have come to the conclusion is that we have to educate. We have to scaffold the knowledge so that decision makers who decide about allocation of resources can make good decisions based on accurate information. And this is not a simple topic. You know, we like to say, stop smoking, have babies sleep on their backs. You know, it's more than that. It's important, but insufficient. So these women that I have gathered who are speakers have their own thoughts, and I trust them. And they're going to reshuffle the order of presentation. I will say that I am proud that we have such a good group of women here who will present this information to you. The seminars are really important in sustainability for you to help us by filling this blue sheet up, because our funders need reports, and so I know it's painful maybe, but please complete this for us. We would not be here, and this is the first time we've ever had an event here in this building, had it not been for Intergovernmental Affairs, Chuck Rivers, who's standing back there, and he has arranged for us to have this room, and we thank them for it. David Bertram is coming from the Lansing office, and he will join us at some point. But at this time, I would like to call on Dr. Kennedy. Okay, the person who is going to introduce Dr. Kennedy is Representative Talib. Is she here? Rashida? Rashida?
No, she's not here yet. Stalwart.
Oh, Representative Stalwart has come in. Thank you. So, I wonder if you have the vice yeah. Yes. These are capable women. Renee says she can introduce herself. Dr. Kennedy is the health officer for IGO. You want to do it? And this is my new chair. They have something in common. They have links to Ohio State University. And I think she made it just in time to be on the
Welcome, everyone. It's great to be here. I do have ties to Ohio State, but I definitely root for the Spartans.
All right.
Yes. Good choice. First Rose Bowl appearance in 26 years. 100th Rose Bowl ceremony. So I'd like to introduce Renee Kennedy, the health officer of the Ingham County Department. The health department, as Dr. Onaga said, she oversees all public health operations and 9 community health centers. She was previously the Deputy Health Department, overseeing in particular the public health nursing, family and outreach services, disease control, health equity and social justice, planning and health assessment, neighborhood engagement, environmental health, and emergency preparedness. She's done it all. She's done everything. So, anything else you'd like to know? Have you just had I'd like to welcome Dr. Kennedy here. Thanks.
Introductions are always so awkward, you know, they're just like, let me just add though, I am a Spartan. I did my I did my PhD in medical sociology at MSU and spent 15 years thereafter on the faculty in the College of Nursing as a medical sociologist. My research was on pregnancy experiences of African American women leading to trying to get some substantive understanding of infant mortality. That's my academic preparation. My personal passion comes from the lived experience of having delivered my first son, Mark Howard Kennedy, when he was 28 weeks gestation, and then 6 months later losing him to complications of that prematurity. And so this is more than just a job for me. I am an educated, highly privileged woman who had access, resources, social support, yet contributed to statistics that are unacceptable in this nation. So I have the privilege of being the understudy today for Dr. Michael Liu, and if you know any of his work, it is phenomenal. You have some references that Dr. Onaga has listed on your resource list, and I would encourage you to read his work. I've had the privilege of talking with him on many occasions. He recently left UCLA and is now back in public health practice, kind of the journey I took, and he's now with the HRSA person, overseeing the Healthy Start initiative, which is a critically important infant mortality prevention effort. So I'm going to give you just kind of some big picture context, and I'm going to try to watch my time and ask my colleagues to help me with. They know I teach a 15-week course on this at MSU, so we can just go. But I wanted to be a little bit provocative with my title. Our governor has recently established prosperity regions across the state. So I want us to think about that word prosperity and what that means, not necessarily only from a fiscal mindset, but from a quality of life mindset. And so when we think about health, the message that we tend to get is, well, eat healthy, get plenty of rest, don't forget to go to the doctor for your preventive checkups, and don't forget to exercise. kind of simple, but we don't take into consideration often that those 4 recommendations get challenged by lots of things, like what does the neighborhood look like that we're living in? What are our kids walking home from school? Is it a polished, manicured area or gravelly, pitted area? What does the business enterprises look like in our region? I had to go down and take an extra turn to flip around to get back here, and need I say anything about the current economic state of the infrastructure of our community here. It depends often, our health, on what our neighbors do. Are our neighbors making healthy choices or not? Violence is indeed a public health concern. What is the built environment? You know, this seems ridiculous, but so many of our clients are living. I'm in the process of trying to negotiate right now to not condemn what I would call a trailer park. And I can't even call it a mobile home community because it is so poorly kept. And then as health officer, though I have that statutory responsibility, I have to balance out, am I going to really put 50 families, low income, vulnerable families out on the street right before the holidays? Or I'm going to let them continue to live in filth and inappropriate squalor? It's a challenge. We shouldn't even have those decisions as health officers. It should be about the healthy option or the healthier option. And we value that as a society. Paint, chipping paint, again, about infrastructure. And not only are we concerned about outdoor air, but indoor air quality. I was just discussing with my colleague who's the the university physician for MSU, because I got an email today that said, was celebrating Ohio State's, I get this parent newsletter, and they were celebrating the fact that Ohio State University is now smoke-free. So I texted my colleague and said, where's MSU on smoke-free? She's been trying. She's been trying. What do we value? What are we pushing? And what do we want in our backyard? Should I, because of my economic income, my educational attainment, be better positioned for greenery, health, and beauty than those who may just not have happened to have the privilege and the resource of higher education? This is a beautiful modern cafeteria. This is a high school right next to the county jail. These are policy-driven decisions that we make collectively as a community. So many people are exposed inadvertently to things that threaten their health when they're just trying to work. And so what are the decisions, what are the standards that we're going to make as a people, as a society? Robert Wood Johnson has this quote that I love, and they say, in the United States, what is needed is improvement in health for everyone, but faster improvement for some. And so with that quote, I want you to look at this. This is the cover of the book. I want you to look mostly on the art, although we're very proud at Ingham County to have a chapter in this book. But I want you to look at the schematic here and tell me, when you look at this picture, what jumps out for you?
Rungs on the ladder on the right side.
Ah, okay, no rungs on the ladder on the right side. Somebody said the disparity. Who said the disparity? What? Say more. What is that? What is showing you disparity in that picture?
Just being able to rise. Being above.
So say more specifically.
Access.
Let's just bring it even to the simple of the picture. What in the picture is saying disparity to you? Who's having a hard time rising? Who's having a easier time rising, and why?
The person of color is having a harder time than the person who's green.
Okay, so person of color, you're in term. Okay, so there's all types types of Van Gogh types of interpretations we can make here, right? So we're seeing green. I don't know if that's inadvertent or if that was intentional by the artist, but certainly we ascribe green to money. What else do we ascribe green to? Health, green communities, eco-friendly. I mean, even how about just stop and go, right? So there's all types of subtle messages, right, that we get from looking at this picture that may be completely subconscious by the author, but by the artist, but what we find now is the operationalization of bias, stigma, bigotry, racism occurs 9 times out of 10 subconsciously, okay? So these two pictures are really, we focused for a long time on the disparity. The differences in this person, the differences in that person. What we want to begin to do is to focus on not what we would call the disparity, but the inequity. The difference in the latter is a systemic, structural inequity that advantages some over others. It's always interesting to me when I show this to some students, some very brilliant Michigan State students, although there are lots of brilliant students all over the place. I know we're right down the street from a brilliant institution. But they said, this guy's like reaching up. He's just, his boundaries are limitless. He's outside the frame of the picture. And she says, wouldn't it have been nice if he had just reached down and gave his colleague, his friend, a hand, or popped him over to his ladder and said, let's just both get up. But we don't tend to think about it because the narrative is about personal responsibility, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Too many people don't have boots, let alone straps, okay? So let me just share with you a couple of definitions that we're using. And I was a health disparities researcher. It wasn't until I transitioned back into public health practice that I began thinking about this distinction between measurable differences, or what we define as a disproportionate difference in health between groups of people. It's measurable, it's identifiable, it's quantifiable, it's describable. The disparity in and of itself, though, doesn't help us understand the chain of events. And so the discourse nationally, particularly in public health, is now moving to a dialogue of health inequities. And Margaret Whitehead, I love this definition. She says it's differences in population health status and mortality rates that are systemic, they are patterned, they are unfair, they are unjust. So we are introducing value statements into the discussion. And most importantly, they're actionable. There is something that we can do about this. We can't just sit back and admire the problem and isn't that awful, and fix poverty. Who can do that? Detroit got to this place by a number of decisions. Denver got to where it is by a number of decisions. And how do we come together and say this is not exclusively about the random choices or the causes or being caused by the people who themselves are ill. So it is a both and. It is about personal responsibility, but it is also about social responsibility. So I love this quote. I'm a quote person. Martin Luther King says, I have the audacity to believe that people everywhere can have 3 meals a day for their bodies, education, and culture for their minds, and dignity, equality, and freedom for their spirits. This is a value that if we as intellectuals, as policymakers, as thinkers, anybody in this room, by virtue of being in this room, is a person of privilege. You're employed, you have transportation to get here, you're able-bodied and you walked here. There are a number of men in the room, they have male privilege, there are a number of Caucasian individuals, that's white privilege. I'd imagine there are people that on the religious box check Christian, that's religious privilege. And for a long time, the narrative was about bashing people for privilege. Oh, men are so bad. Oh, whites are so bad. No, how do we each, based upon our own identities of strength, then use that strength to advantage people that don't have it? So we know that the health outcomes are not just about clinical decisions. And I was in the stacks doing my dissertation research. I'm so sad that doctoral students don't get the privilege of hanging out in the stacks now. They get to all do it electronically. Looking at books, beside books, like, oh, this is great. There was a publication by the American Journal of Public Health. It was like a 1912 publication. And the name of the article was The Negro Health Problem. And I could have taken that article, photocopied it, whited out Negro, whited out the date, and passed it out today. In the 1800s, African American babies were twice as likely to die as white babies. In the 1900s, African American babies are twice to 4 times as likely to die as white babies. We got to do better, and we've got to stop admiring the problem. And so we believe that in this effort to be prosperous and to do well, that perhaps it is the social determinants of health that we're missing. And so there are lots of social factors that are not clinical, physiological, biological, that are impacting health, and we believe that impact health even more greatly than clinical advances. So we've got housing issues, and not just housing issues, but safe, affordable housing. Living wage, not just do you have a salary, but can you make a living off of this? Not are you just educated, but is it a quality education? Is it a safe educational setting? Transportation, food availability, social connection. You know, the fact that we don't talk to each other as much anymore as neighbors. My neighbor came over yesterday and gave me a box that UPS had dropped off, and she says, you know, it's just really quiet. You're never around much, are you? I'm really busy, but no, we don't. We have these wonderful things we call garages, and we pull our cars into them, and we put the door down, and we don't see each other. We're losing social capital and connectivity. And we know that nations that have greater social capital and connectivity have better health outcomes than us. Job security. So there are all of these things. And what we're focusing on pretty exclusively is the fact that these social factors cause people to be stressed. Stress causes unhealthy behaviors. And as a result of that, we have poor health outcomes. But the challenge is, this is only the end of the story. The part of the story that we need to discuss, that we don't want to discuss, are the power and wealth imbalances. Who's making the zoning decisions? Who's giving the contracts to whom? What is the policy around smoking or not smoking? Those are decisions based in power. And power is based in social structures that we in public health now tend to look at 3 big green boxes. Any thoughts on what those boxes might be? I kind of gave you some hints. Institutional racism and the subtle but continuing, inadvertent, I'll give us the benefit of the doubt, consequences of institutional racism, of gender oppression, and of economic bias, economic oppression. These factors still impact decision-making that affect our health and our health outcomes. So we've got a lot of work to do. We've got to change the way we think about the problem. So one of the things we've been trying to do in Ingham County is sort of change the way we ask the questions. So instead of just asking, why do people smoke? We should also maybe ask, what are the social conditions and the economic policies that predispose people to the stress that causes them to smoke? Smoking is an addictive, it's not just a bad habit, it is an addiction. But we treat it like a habit, and then we say, well, just stop smoking. without dealing with all the factors that cause people to smoke. Instead of saying who lacks access to healthy food, why, let's talk about what policy changes would redistribute healthy food resources more equitably. Couple more. How can we create more green space, more bike paths, farmers markets? These are all great questions. But what we also need to ask are what are the governmental policies and practices by commerce as well that would help us make the healthy choice the easy choice. So I challenge you to imagine health. What's my role? What's your role? What's our role together? So that we can think not just about how do we keep ourselves healthy, but how do we make sure the next generation is healthy in terms of, it wasn't, my pregnancy outcome likely had nothing to do with my choices, had everything to do with my own in utero experience. What stressors was my mom exposed to that then got operationalized? Michael Liu and Tony Eisen talk about our genetic code being more predictive, being less predictive than our zip code. What determines how healthy we are is our zip code, not so much our genetic code. So I'm going to defer to my colleagues at this point to move to the next discussion. And then I would suggest, I actually have a video clip, it's a 3-minute clip, and I would suggest that we show it at the end of all of our presentations. Thank you.
These are incredible women who have their own lives. So we're now switching who's going to talk next. And Representative Stallworth is here to introduce our next speaker. And I'd like you to also meet the Representative Rashida Khalid, who is also
Sheila?
It's okay, because I got the kids, you'll run out there. He's gonna run out there.
This is like a family
Good morning, everybody. For those of you I haven't met, I'm Thomas Stallworth, the state representative in the 7th District, sit on the House Education and Health Policy Committees. I've known Althea for many, many years, and it's a pleasure for me to be here, not only to introduce her, but to be a part of this discussion. It's also my privilege to stand with my colleague, Representative Rashida Tlaib, who is, in my estimation, one of our premier warriors on the issue of health, environmental safety for our community. I've learned a lot from her since I've been in the legislature. But I'm not going to bother to read Althea's introduction. You can read that for yourself. But let me just say, I found it interesting, Dr. Kennedy talked about the publications from the 1800s and 1900s. My personal story, and when I met Althea, was back in the 70s, when my mom, Elma Stallworth, was in the legislature, and started the Black Child Development Affiliate here in the city of Detroit. And they jointly decided to take on the issue of infant mortality. Well, when I came to the legislature some 3 years ago, Althea came to my office to talk to me again about infant mortality, and to my chagrin, nothing had changed. I think you remember the conversation. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. We were fighting this battle this long, and we're still where we are. And so, you know, I pay homage to you, Althea, because of all of the work that you have done against tremendous obstacles and resistance to change. And so I don't want to, I just very quickly want to say and make an observation, if I can take some privilege, just to say in the report you have in your binder, you will see the state's dashboard. The governor's has established infant mortality as a goal. I guess that's what he's established it as. I always find it curious that there are no targets for improvement. And so we just have these green lights and red lights, thumbs up and thumbs down, which to me isn't a real catalyst for change. Everything we have when we decide to stand up and fight for change, there's not a battle we fought we haven't won. But it doesn't happen without clear objectives, clearly established targets and measures that we can envision, we can see, and we can drive toward. And I know Althea has been fighting that battle for a long time, and it's just my pleasure to be here with you today in support of all of your efforts.
Thank you for that introduction. I'm really pleased to be here. I will mention that this is my inaugural presentation as a state retiree. This
Now she can tell us
August.
what she really thinks.
Right. I take a look at the chair. And just for the sake of time, I will highlight that in 2008, while I was the Bureau Director of our Maternal Child Health Bureau, we held an infant mortality summit, as Representative Starr mentioned. And at that time, we had Dr. Lee come and present, as well as Dr. Kennedy, our in-house specialist. And both helped us to understand that, as you've heard, we really needed to begin to stop just looking at the disparity that exists. Because as we saw the disparity, and this slide may be familiar to some of you, as we saw the disparity over time, even though infant mortality was declining, and this takes us from 1970 to 2010, you see the green line represents our state infant mortality rate, the gray line, the white infant mortality rate, and the orange, our African American infant mortality rate, going down over time, and yet that disparity continues. What may not be familiar to you is the blue line. That's our infant mortality ratio. And when we calculated that and plotted that, it showed us that the ratio of black infant deaths was actually increasing over time, though the numbers were going down. And that was just not acceptable to us. The 2008 summit helped us to understand we needed to really begin to figure out what it takes to address health equity and begin to try to affect health equity in Michigan. And so we took that back. I won't, you've seen the definitions. Before I go there, let me just pace up for a minute. I do want to mention, as Representative Stallworth alluded, during this same time, we had several things going on simultaneously. Because we wanted to take a different path than we were being funded for, we wrote and received a grant from the Kellogg Foundation to provide our staff workshops and opportunities to better understand what health equity means and what it would mean in terms of the way we change our approach to our work. We also, as was noted, had our Governor Snyder identified infant mortality reduction as a priority, which really put the spotlight on infant mortality. But also at the same time, we were continuing to experience cuts in funding for women and children, which meant we weren't even going to be able to maintain the work that we've been involved in if that continued. And so we pulled together experts from across the state to develop the infant mortality reduction plan, which you received in your packet, and really took some time to look at the scientific evidence that was out there and identified a defined number of strategies. We have 7 strategies that are part of the plan that science says will come to better improve birth outcomes for all infants. And we added a 7th and 8th strategy, weaving the social determinants of health into all of those 7 strategies. Because we recognize unless we address Black babies dying, we were not going to improve health equity in Michigan. And so we've had this plan. We had another summit in 2011 where the experts from the state recommended that we use the strategies that you see there and released it, and have been using that for the past several years. And really, we printed about 100, we printed a limited number of the document, but we posted it on our website so that it could have broad access. And we found that people are using it from across the state and nationally. Also, another thing that was going on at the same time was nationally infant mortality reduction became a priority. HRSA identified reducing preterm birth as a specific initiative with a target of identified that states were asked to commit to, and Michigan was one of those states that took the commitment on. And as Dr. Kennedy mentioned, Dr. Michael Liu became the MCH director for our country, which was again another really major step that helped us to better focus on what we needed to do to improve our infant mortality rates. So I don't really need to talk about health disparities. Dr. Kennedy covered both that as well as health equity quite well. I will mention that we adapted this health equity definition as what we consider when we think about health equity and look at how we address our work in public health. One of the things that became quite clear from the information that we've learned along the way is that people of color tend to have more risk factors and fewer or limited number of protective factors. When you think about that and how it impacts health, it's called the life course perspective theory. Dr. Liu talked about it in 2008 with us. We took some time to better understand what it meant. And it really means that we've got to figure out how to increase those protective factors that people of color need in order to have a comparable health outcome to our white population. At the same time, we have to maximize those points in the life scheme that are key to improving health. Points like pregnancy, infancy, early childhood, pre-puberty, adolescence, and then the reproductive years. Because those are key times within our lifespan where we can affect the health outcome, not only for the individual that we're working with, but as Dr. Kennedy mentioned, for their offspring as well. And so you'll hear about the work that's been going on through the PRIDE project within Michigan Department of Community Health that's helping us to really figure out what that means in terms of the way we change our approach to our work. Because we are scientists, we wanted to measure the impact of this change in our approach to work. And so you'll find referenced in your material, though the copy isn't there, the website is there. We developed this report called the Michigan Health Equity Status Report that includes these social determinants, which we recognize aren't all of them, but they were metrics that we had access to data that we reported on as of 2013 and intend to continue to look at over time to see if we're making the positive impact that we expect, or at least to see what impact we're making, whether positive or negative. I really encourage you to take a look at this report. You know, this session was designed to really speak to our elected officials, and one of the things that I wanted to share is what you could do with the information that you're hearing today. So I included a few recommendations in your PowerPoint that I really want to stress. First, take time to look at the health equity status report. It's online, it's easy to access. You may even want to begin to consider it as you make decisions during your daily work. Take a look at our website. We have at michigan.gov, and if you search on holes in the mitten, you'll see not only the health equity status report, you'll see the infant mortality report, you'll see other information that's been posted there by our health disparity reduction section, as well as the minority health area that I think will be good references for you that Michigan specific and can help you to think about things, I think, a little differently as you approach your work. Please keep in mind that this type of approach needs resources. We've been using a siloed approach to programming over time. That's the way funding comes down. We get money for family planning, we get money for child health, you know, and you can only use it down in this stream, and you can only use these dollars in this other stream. We really need to move away from that way of funding, because as you can tell from the social determinants of health, all of these things that may not be responsibilities of the health department, but they affect our lives. They affect all of our lives if you think about it. If you didn't have a car to get here today, you may not have made it. So, you know, as you consider the funding, the way funding is being made over time, recognize that infrastructure support is necessary if we are going to be able to work across areas. And I'm not suggesting that public health take on the role of transportation or the role of our Department of Human Services, but certainly begin to work closer with those departments as we conduct our work. And then use market research technology. You know, advertisement and businesses use this technology all the time to get a better understanding of what the population wants, what they do, and what would be effective with them. We should use this as well in public health and match that information along with our public health data so you better understand your communities. Include flexibility in funding and joint grant approaches to address the social determinants, again, that partnering, working with the non-traditional partners to make sure that our programming doesn't adversely affect the population we're trying to reach. And then finally, understand that equity is not equality. And this last slide really says it better than I can. When you take a look at it, the slide on the left is equality. Everybody has the same size crate. They're looking at the same fence and looking at the same game. But if you notice, the short boy can't see the game. He's not even in it. Equity allows you to give whatever you need. It allows you to use a different size crate, 2 crates if you need it, for those that need that extra help. And so I'll end with that. Brenda Jagaday is going to talk about our private project